improving, your HDL, the good cholesterol, goes up, triglycerides go down, the inflammatory markers in your blood start to go down. You know, Chris, we're talking about health here.
Right. Well, unfortunately, Dr. Pincus, we are about out of time here. Anything else you want to share with our listeners today?
Yeah, Chris, first of all, I want to thank you again for having me on your show.
It's always great fun, especially when it's a surprise like this.
And for those of you listening, I want to let you know that I really believe there's no accidents. I think we're all here together for a reason. And I want to let you know that health is a two-way partnership. Even with my patients, I'm there to help as much as I can. Now, with my Super C22, I've done the work, but you have to take the next step. So I urge you to call in, order my formula, get on it, give it to your family, and see for yourself how it works for you.
I want to let you listeners know that if you want to get a free book about vitamin C and try Dr. Pincus's Super C22 formula absolutely risk-free, there's a special toll-free number to call. It's 1-800-208-2952. You know, Super C22 is packed with 22 pure forms of vitamin C that your body desperately needs year-round for optimal health and protection from colds and flu. And by getting the right amounts of vitamin C in the right forms into your body, you're also going to live longer, you'll have increased energy and less pain. And just so you know, Dr. Pincus has arranged a very special offer that's only available to you listeners. So when you call, be sure to mention this program, and you're going to get a risk-free trial of Dr. Pincus's Super C22 formula. Again, this is only available to you listeners, and only if you call this toll-free number. It's 1-800-208-2952. And if you're one of the first 100 callers, you'll also get a free copy of the Guide to Vitamin C. Now, this book reveals why vitamin C is the absolute key to reducing or even eliminating your health problems. This goes way, way beyond just the cold and the flu. You're going to learn how vitamin C shields against high blood pressure, heart disease, and stroke. Chapter 6 covers vitamin C and cancer. You're going to learn how to slow down the aging process and have better skin, joints, and vision. It's all in this very informative book. Folks, this is a really great offer. You get the free book, you get to try Dr. Pincus's Super C22 formula with an extra free supply, and you get Dr. Pincus's audio CD. The number to call is 1-800-208-2952. 208-2952. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks again to our sponsor, Dr. Newton's Naturals. You can visit them online at drnewtons.com. I'm Chris McKay. Have a great day, everybody.
WTBN Pinellas Park, WLCC Brandon.
Faith Talk Tampa, online at letstalkfaith.com. Download the Faith Talk Tampa app.
With SRN News, I'm Bob Agnew in Washington. World leaders and the Russian opposition activists wasted no time on Friday in blaming the reported death of an imprisoned opposition leader, Alexei Navalny, on President Vladimir Putin and his government.
Alexei Navalny was a man who dared to speak out in a country where dissent is dangerous. As news of the opposition activist's death spread, Russians gathered to remember him. No mass protest or public fury, just silent tributes at monuments to the victims of political repression. There were a handful of arrests. Mostly, though, people seemed stunned.
That is the BBC's Sarah Rainsford reporting from Moscow. Many are gathered at the Munich Security Conference, where the agenda included defense assistance for Ukraine. President Biden has picked up an endorsement he may not want. White House correspondent Greg Clarkson explains.
Russian President Vladimir Putin said his country would prefer to see Joe Biden win a second term, describing him as more experienced and predictable than Donald Trump. That's even though Moscow strongly disagrees with the current administration's policies. Mr. Biden is a fierce critic of the Russian leader, calling him a killer in 2021 and denouncing Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Putin has frequently praised Trump, so his motives for saying President Biden is a better choice for Russia were unclear. Greg Clugston, the White House.
Former Senator Jim Talent says it's no surprise Israel is ignoring calls from Western liberals not to invade Rafah.
Well, I mean, the problem here is that Israel is insisting on winning. And the Biden administration and much of Western Europe doesn't want them to win. They were okay with them fighting for a while, but not winning.
Talent was interviewed by the Salem Radio Network. This is SRN News.
The following program is sponsored by the law offices of Patrick L. Smith. This is the Attorney Patrick Smith Show. Get ready with your legal questions and call Patrick now. 877-943-9673. Again, that's 877-943-9673. The law office is open. And now your host, Patrick Smith.
Good morning, and welcome to another edition of the Attorney Patrick Smith Show. I'm your host, Attorney Patrick Smith. Today is Saturday, February 17th, and we will be live with you for the next hour. The law office is open. Give us a call now, 877-943-9673. If you have a question that's brewing throughout the week, a legal question, any topic at all, no topic off limits, 877-943-9673. A very rainy drive in across the Howard Franklin this morning. It's starting to drizzle, and I think we're going to get some rain throughout the day. I heard they may actually be moving the Daytona 500 start time. There's a possibility of that getting moved to Monday, I heard. Nothing confirmed yet. I know they've been moving around the Gators baseball schedule for today a little bit. I heard last it was going to be a 10 a.m. start time for the Gators, so it's breakfast with the Gators this morning as far as baseball, if that's still the case. But the rain kicking up now, so be safe, extra safe on those roadways as you're driving around town. Remember, it's not important you get there quick, it's important that you get there. That's what my dad used to always tell me when we were learning how to drive in those early days. So 877-943-9673, 877-943-9673. That's your live and local number to call in with your legal question today. We're going to talk to you today, and we're going to start the show by talking about something that I've noticed a lot recently at the law office in the practice, and it's watching people lose their best friend. So watching a marriage of sometimes 40, 50, 60, sometimes even longer years lose that first spouse and some of the anxieties that I'm seeing. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, but I want to encourage you, if you want to call in, if you've lost a spouse and you just want to share about the spouse you've lost, just sort of get it off your chest a little bit. We'll offer you some time. We'll answer your questions and try to put you at ease. And I'll go through some common things I'm seeing and some solutions, some things to be aware of, and how to address these issues appropriately. So 877-943-9673. Of course, we'll take all your other legal questions as well, but particularly the widows and the widowers out there who are dealing with the loss of that best friend of a long-term relationship. You know, I've been married. May will make 21 years. I would be apoplectic without my wife, and I can only imagine what it must feel like after, 50 or 60 years of marriage, waking up that first day without that person being there. So it's got to be trying, and I see it at the law office and what people go through and kind of what their common fears are. So I want to spend a little bit of time today talking to you about that. If you have a question, 877-943-9673. Joe and I were talking before the show about a song to intro this particular segment. Hey, you know who we should have asked, Joe, with more time? We should have asked Mo from the Cat Named Mo show, because his music expertise, he would have had the perfect song. We kept thinking about songs, but nothing that really felt right. Everything felt a little too down or too on the nose, so nothing really to properly kind of express the sentiment of sympathy that we have for everyone out there who's lost that significant other. So if you want to call in and share about that significant other or call in with any legal question, 877-943-9673. The first thing I want to say to those of you who are widows or widowers out there is don't forget to grieve. So many people immediately go into business mode, and it's like, what do I have to do? I have to create a checklist. I have to go down a checklist. No, there are things that need to get done. But the most important thing is you. And you've got to put yourself as a priority in this. And I know it's easy to, run from the grief by immersing yourself with the busyness of a loved one passing away. And there are things you need to get to, but I think it's most important to focus on you, whether you go to talk to a best friend, a trusted family member, your pastor, a professional counselor, someone. It is very important that you process through this grief and this trauma and not just bury your head in the sand of staying busy and going to see family and friends, or, running from bank to bank, taking care of things and things of that nature. I think it's important to focus on you and making sure you're moving through the grieving process. And there's no correct way to move through the grieving process. It's highly individualized, and that's just from firsthand empirical research sitting across the desk from people going through it. But the most important thing that I've discovered over the years is people need to go through it. And a lot of people don't. And when they don't, and they bury that trauma, sometimes they tailspin. So that's exactly what you want to avoid. So number one tip, make sure you recognize the fact that you're grieving and give yourself permission to grieve. And if need be, seek out professional help regarding you grieving the loss of your significant other. Joining a support group, that's a very common thing we're seeing. A lot of churches now doing support groups for those who have lost spouses. So there's lots of wonderful help and resources out there, and make sure you reach out and get that help that you need. 877-943-9673. That's your live and local number to be part of today's show. I'm Attorney Patrick Smith, and this is the Attorney Patrick Smith Show, and we will be with you the next hour. We're walking you through some common tips for widows and widowers, recent widows and widowers. So you're recently experiencing the loss of your spouse. What are the things you need to do? We just talked about how it's important to care for yourself and make sure you grieve. Number two on that list would be make sure you make the funeral arrangements. A lot of times this is where the family will come into town and they will attend that appointment with you with the funeral home. A lot of times the spouse, they've already prepaid or made arrangements, and that's extremely helpful. If you and your spouse have done that planning, it takes a big burden off of the surviving spouse. Even if you haven't prepaid so much, if you've put in writing kind of what your wishes are, there's less head scratching by the surviving spouse as to what needs to be done. So the more you can put in place ahead of time, obviously, would help your surviving spouse if you are still out there and with your spouse. And for those of you who have lost that spouse, following those wishes and making certain that you execute their wishes with regard to handling their remains, any services, not services. It definitely seems to be a trend for no services. And where we see something being done, it's definitely not a traditional church service. It's more like a celebration of life. That's definitely becoming more and more popular. And I think that's a good view on things, because I think a lot of us out there believe that, death is not the end. It's entering new life. If you believe the teachings of Jesus, that's what he says. You're not dying, you're entering new life. So it is really a time to celebrate. And it's one of those things where, you make sure you want to honor your loved one's wishes as far as if they want burial, cremation, to be entombed, whatever the case may be. You want to make sure, and this often happens when you contact the funeral home, you'll want to contact the Social Security office as well, and your benefits obviously may adjust based on the death of your spouse as well. So 877-943-9673. That's your live and local number. I'm your host, Attorney Patrick Smith, and this is the Attorney Patrick Smith Show. You can email your questions, by the way, patrick@attorneypatricksmith.com. Before we continue talking about widows and widowers today, for those of you still requesting the New York, Florida show, which was our show on January 27th, still a very popular show. We got more requests for it this past week. If you want to check out the website, attorneypatricksmith.com, and just scroll down to the radio section, click on that, and the shows are titled by date. So it'd be January 27th broadcast. Click on that, and you can listen to the New York, Florida discussion with Attorney Ken Henry, licensed New York attorney, anytime on demand. And we are actually in the process, after the success of that show with Attorney Ken Henry, we're considering doing a segment like estate planning around the country, and we're going to have different attorneys from different states come on the show and talk about the differences between those states and Florida's laws, since we do have so many snowbirds from different jurisdictions, and this would be a good topic. I think that discussion would benefit the listenership quite a bit. So stay tuned for more on that. And again, for those of you who want to hear the Florida New York show, you can email me directly. We'll send you an email with the link. Or you can just go to the website, attorneypatricksmith.com, scroll down to radio, click on the radio link, and then scroll down to the January 27th broadcast. That was also a special broadcast because we were live from New York City as well. So I think that's the third time. I think it was the third time we broadcast from New York City. Third time, yeah. So we're almost part of the 5 Timers Club. We're 2 away. So maybe we get a jacket then or something. 877-943-9673. If you want to be part of today's show, call in with any legal question at all. I'm your host, Attorney Patrick Smith. And our next item on the list for widows and widowers. We started talking about grieving and then making funeral arrangements, contacting Social Security, and of course, you want to go visit your attorney. And I say to clients who call me, because clients will call and the loved one will have just passed away within a couple of days, and they feel like they have to get in yesterday to take care of everything. And that's rare that there's something that needs that sort of immediate attention. I usually tell clients to say, once you've made the arrangements and secured a death certificate, come in and we'll review the entire file with you free of charge and see what, if anything, needs to be updated. Well, what is the anything that we oftentimes run into needing to be updated? Well, you see, oftentimes the power of attorney was made out to the deceased spouse now, so we need to update that power of attorney. In light of that spouse's passing, occasionally there are updates in the beneficiary designations because of incidents that unfold in the wake of the passing of that spouse. And occasionally you see a reordering of the administrators. When the first spouse goes, the surviving spouse sees how the other family sort of reacts to it, and sometimes they make a different assessment on who they think is best suited to handle their passing and gathering the assets, paying the taxes, settling creditor claims. They sort of get a preview of what it's going to be like with the death of that first spouse. So sometimes they come in and say, you know what? In the wake of this, I think I want to, change it from 1, 2, 3 to make it 2, 1, 3 and put this one in charge. But the point is, you revisit these things, and sometimes you don't change anything. But the point is, you revisit these things with your attorney to see what, if anything, you want to adjust. And at least if you change nothing, you're just confirming that everything is exactly the way you want. The name of the game here is just leaving with as much peace in your heart as possible, considering the trauma you're going through. So when you have that sit down with your attorney, you have an opportunity to ask your questions, get them answered directly, and review all your documents to see, again, what you need to update. So again, and it's tough. So like I said, if you want to call in and just share about your spouse and just talk about it, you're welcome to do so. If you have a legal question about losing a spouse, 877-943-9673, 877-943-9673. I'm your host, Attorney Patrick Smith, and we'll be with you for the remainder of the hour to answer all of your legal questions. You can email me, patrick@attorneypatricksmith.com. patrick@attorneypatricksmith.com. Again, if you want to be part of the show live, 877-943-9673, live and open studio lines. Get you right on the air to answer all of your legal questions today, 877-943-9673. And this was the question that came in this week at the law office specifically that sort of jump-started my desire to do this segment on widows and widowers. One spouse had passed away, surviving spouse called in and said, my deceased spouse had racked up quite a bit in credit card debt. Am I responsible for that credit card debt? Now, here was the interesting thing. There were multiple credit cards. So one of the credit cards was in just the deceased spouse's name. The surviving spouse never used it, never signed on, nothing to do with it. So the short answer there is the surviving spouse was not responsible for this debt. Well, who was? It would have been the estate of the deceased spouse. So the estate of the deceased spouse, that's defined. So by definition, that would be something in just the deceased spouse's name without any sort of named beneficiary on there. Okay? Now, in this case, everything the deceased spouse owned was joint with the surviving spouse. So the deceased spouse estate was zero. There was no estate. So essentially, this credit card was going to go unpaid because there was no estate that was able to be attached or credited for satisfaction of that debt. Now, the next credit card was in the deceased spouse's name. But in addition to that, the surviving spouse was an authorized user on that credit card. So in that case, because they had signed on, they did have some exposure to that particular debt. So when it comes to your spouse's debts, you want to particularly review those with your attorney. And you want to look at how the notice regarding the debt is addressed. Is it to you? Or is it to the estate of your deceased spouse? Is it just to your deceased spouse? But you want to check with your attorney to see whether or not you need to pay it. Too many times I think people just go ahead and knee-jerk and pay it, and they don't really have any responsibility to pay that debt. And it may take 5 minutes to call your attorney and check and see whether or not you need to pay that debt. And in a world where there is an estate, and you are doing a probate, there is a process whereby creditors are noticed. It's called the notice to creditors. And this is where that ad, you see that in the section of the paper with all that really small print, the notices section, and they have all those notice to creditors in there. If you have a debt against a particular estate, here's who to contact and how to process your claim, and you have to file a claim. And if a creditor files a claim with the court, then the personal representative of that estate is notified, and they're given 30 days to either let the claim stand or object. And if they object to the claim, then that shifts the burden back to the creditor to either go away or to file an independent action seeking that payment for that debt. So again, don't just knee-jerk into paying the debts because you got a bill in your late spouse's name. Check with your counsel on that. 877-943-9673. 877-943-9673. I'm your host, Attorney Patrick Smith. This is the Attorney Patrick Smith Show, and we will be with you the remainder of the hour to answer all of your legal questions. I want to say a very special thank you to all the residents of Coquina Cove in Largo, Florida, who invited us out to speak at their board meeting this past week. Great turnout. We had a huge in-person crowd and then a bunch of people watching via Zoom as well, and it was a very erudite group and a very lofty Q&A session, definitely more lively than a lot of my other crowds. And I got lots of fantastic questions regarding trust and sort of where to situs them. There was one particular young lady who wanted to know about creating her trust in Florida, even though she was a resident of a different state. And the critical point there was you want to create the trust in the jurisdiction of your residency. And it's one of those situations where that sometimes comes up for debate. And hence, this is the reason why we did the show on Florida and New York. And this question comes up all the time. Clients are actually debating this. Will I situs everything? Do I want to be a resident of Florida or this other state? Well, the procedure for that is you have consultations with attorneys in both jurisdictions. And then you can weigh and balance those options before you make that decision. So you sort of look before you leap in that case. So again, thank you to everyone at Coquina Cove who came out. We have a couple of speaking engagements coming up. Both are actually on Tuesday, February 27th, with Raymond James and Cindy Richards. We will be doing a presentation at the Villages Public Library at the Pinellas Plaza. That will be at 11 a.m. on February 27th. I will finish up from there and drive straight to the Canal Court Rec Center. And that will be at 1 p.m. And that is for and you know, they say up in the villages, there is a group for everyone. And it's presentations before groups like this that make me realize that. Because we will be presenting for the pet parrots and their parents group. So that will be at 1 p.m. I imagine that will be a presentation largely on pet trust. And we can talk a little bit about pet trust now, actually. But if you need a speaker for your group or organization, the office line. And again, this is the office line you can call for your complimentary consultation on estate planning as well. Or you're welcome to email us directly, Patrick at attorneypatricksmith.com. But again, the office line, if you want to schedule your free consultation or book us to come in and speak to your club or group, 877-754-6764. 877-754-6764. 6764. Again, that's the toll-free office line. Office lines are open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And you can call 877-754-6764. And we would be happy to book you for that consultation or come out and speak to your club or group. And we'll keep you posted as speaking engagement season is in full effect. We'll keep you aware of all of them if you want to come out. And if you've attended one and you want to call in with your feedback or email me your feedback, I love the feedback because we're always looking for ways to make the presentations better and more helpful for you, the listener. 877-943-9673. 877-943-9673. That's your live and local studio line. Open phone lines will get you queued up. And you can call in now with your legal question. 877-943-9673. And we kicked off the show by talking about widows and widowers and the sorts of issues that are facing different widows and widowers out there regarding the anxieties of their passing and making the funeral arrangements, contacting Social Security, working with the attorney. And also, we kicked it off really by talking about the number one thing needing to be done was focusing on your grief and not turning a blind eye to it, and make sure you reach out for help, either professionally or talk to a family friend or a pastor or someone that can be entrusted with listening to you go through the grieving process. And there is just something therapeutic about getting it out. So we encourage you to do that. And we then talked a little bit about our presentations from the past week and some upcoming presentations. And one of those is before a pet parents and their parents group. So let's talk a little bit about pet trust. You know, people love to be good stewards of their assets for their family, and a lot of families include furry family members. So people often carry it to that degree, and they say, I want to make sure, and I did several of these trusts this past week, where people say, well, if we have any animals, we're going to make sure to set aside X number of dollars for the care of any animals we have and make sure that they go to this person. So a lot of people don't know that you can do that. And oftentimes it'll come up in the consultation. They'll say, well, other than our furry friends. And I'll say, oh, you have animals. Would you like to provide for them? They say, we didn't know we could do that. Yeah, you certainly can provide for them. So if you want to provide for your animal, you'll just create within the trust, a pet provision that says to whom the animal is going to be devised and how much you would like to go with that animal. And that's sort of based on their life expectancy and also the type of animal. I would say in sort of the top 4 animal categories, if you want to call in and guess, you can call in and guess the top 4 animals and that are left money in estate plans based on my experience. So if you want to call in and guess, we'll play a little guessing game regarding that. 877-943-9673. 877-943-9673. Patrick@attorneypatricksmith.com to email your question. Patrick@attorneypatricksmith.com. So again, you can email us and we'll answer your question live on the show, or you can give us a call now, 877-943-9673. And yeah, sometimes you see cases where people want to leave the entire share to an animal or to a group of animals. You see people who leave substantial sums. But the point is, you can provide for care for your animals, and a lot of people like that idea, just knowing that when they enter eternity, if they do so before their animal passes away, their animal is going to be cared for, and that gives them peace of mind. So 877-943-9673 to be part of today's show. And again, that toll-free office line, for those of you wanting to book in Sun City Center, Clearwater, Claremont, the Villages, Sarasota, any of our office locations, that toll-free office line, 877-754-6764. 877-754-6764. All right, let's go to Joanne in Sarasota. Joanne in Sarasota, welcome to the Attorney Patrick Smith Show. How are you today, Joanne?
Okay, very good. Thank you. And yourself as well, I hope.
Everything's fine. Is it rainy down there in Sarasota today?
No, it's sort of grayish.
All right, so it says you want to guess one of the top 4 animals. Go.
Well, I think a Shih Tzu or a Peekapoo or one of those, yeah.
That's correct. Dog is number 3 on the list, Joanne, so well done. Do you want to make another guess?
I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you remember that you asked me what about the game and who I thought would win? I wondered if you thought about it when it happened. I said overtime with the Kansas City.
I was bragging about you this week, Joanne. When that happened, I went to the office on Monday and I said, Joanne from Sarasota called it exactly. And Joanne, if you would have put money on that in Vegas, that it was going to go in overtime and the Chiefs would have won it in overtime,
yes,
the bundle you would have won. I'm not promoting gambling, by the way. I'm just saying, had you placed a bet to that effect,
I thought about that.
The windfall you would have come in. I mean, the IRS would have sent you roses and a thank you note for winning that kind of money.
Well, you know, when it happened, I thought, gee, I should have placed a bet.
It's not a bad idea. And I mean, if you could always know the outcome and then place the bet, but that's why they call it gambling and we don't promote it. So, but yeah, so absolutely, Joanne, if you know, hindsight for you was perfect, and your foresight was perfect as well. So, Joanne, well done on predicting not only who would win the game, but that it would go into overtime. And that's only the second time in Super Bowl history that it's ever. So, I mean, impressive analysis, Joanne. Any other predictions for the future for us?
No, I'm off the football thing.
All right, what about presidential predictions? You got any predictions there?
Dare I say so? It'll be great confusion, but I think Trump will get it.
All right, there you go. You heard it first. Joanne's 1 for 1 on predictions, folks. So, hey, listen, there's her prediction. Any other guesses on the top 4 animal list that are left money through estate plans, Joanne?
I would say poodles, or I would say poodles.
Well, dogs is the category. So you already guessed dogs. Dogs are number 3 on the list.
Oh, what did you ask me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the types of animals, the top 4 types of animals that are left money as inheritances. And cats are number 4. Cats are number 4 on the list. All right, as long as you keep guessing one of them, I'm going to let you keep guessing, Joanne. So you got number 4, which was cats. Number 3 was dogs. You want to go for number 2 or number 1?
Goodness. Birds? Parakeets?
Birds. That is impressive. Birds. A lot of people miss that one. So birds are actually number 1 on the list. Yeah.
I can believe it. I had parakeets all my life. They're fun.
I love seeing someone who is in their 70s or 80s go out and buy a bird that has a 75-year life expectancy. I mean, that is the definition of optimism. That is just saying, look, things are going to turn out fine, and I'm going to go buy this bird that'll live 75 years and expect to be here the whole time. So,
and talks to me.
Yeah. And so I'm excited to speak to this Pet Parrots group on the 27th, because I presume this will come up. And all right, you want to guess? You're 1 away from completing the top 4 list, Joanne. So any guess on what number 2 is?
Okay, let me think. Monkeys?
No, but good guess. So if I'll give you one more chance, Joanne. One last guess.
Boa constrictors.
No. That's wow. Way to go outside the box, though. No, definitely not. I've never had anyone leave money for snakes or any sort of reptilian creature. But that's a great point, Joanne. That probably will happen now that you called in with that thought. So,
right,
Joanne, you're always a delight to talk to. You too. Be safe out there and keep those amazing predictions coming for us. Okay, Joanne.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. 877-943-9673. That's your live and local number to be part of today's show. 877-943-9673, and you call on the list. So number 1, again, was birds. Number 2 was, we haven't gone over number 2 yet. Number 3 was dogs. Number 4 was cats. So if you want to call in with your guess about what number 2 is, we'll let you take your guess or your legal question. 877-943-9673. 877-943-9673. Yes, we're still on SCOTUS watch for the decision regarding President Trump and the ballot, and I'm just hoping that it comes out early in the week and not on a Friday afternoon when we have to do immediate rewrite of all the show prep that we do. So stay tuned. We will keep you posted as that decision comes down, and then we will do a thorough constitutional law analysis. Yeah, we try to stay away from the politics side of it. There's other guys who do better shows for that kind of stuff. I like to bring you sort of the legal angle regarding that particular analysis. So we will keep you posted and then do our full analysis. I'll look up and see what show it was, but a few weeks back we actually did the primer show for the actual opinion regarding Section 3 of the 14th Amendment as a disqualification clause. And so for those of you who are regular listeners, you're already prepped for the discussion and analysis of the opinion. But for those of you who are not, you can actually go to the website again and scroll back through the shows and find that show if you want to listen to the prequel, if you will, to the analysis of the forthcoming Supreme Court decision regarding President Trump and his ballot access. I believe it's in the state of Colorado. 877-943-9673 to be part of today's show. I'm your host, Attorney Patrick Smith. This is the Attorney Patrick Smith Show. All right, next we're going to Kevin in Apollo Beach. Kevin, welcome to the Attorney Patrick Smith Show. How are you today?
Very good, thank you.
Good. How can we help you?
I was just wondering about I understand the trust, but protecting the estate from creditors. my understanding is you pretty much, in the state of Florida, you have to go through probate to begin the clock, and I believe it's 2 years. Is that the best way, is to set some assets up that you have to go through probate?
So nothing in the trust has to go through probate. The 2-year statutory bar is if you don't publish a notice to creditors. So if you publish a notice to creditors, that will shorten it down to that 90-day window. If you don't do that, then you're under the 2-year bar under the statute.
Oh, so you can just publish a notice to creditors. You don't have to go through probate, and in 90 days, creditors have...
Oh, I see your point. So how do we publish a notice to creditors if we're not opening a probate? So a lot of times what you'll see people do is they will allege some small amount of personal property, and say it's $500 in personal property just to open a probate for the sake of publishing a notice to creditors. If the creditors aren't known, a lot of times people will just wait the 2-year statutory bar, or they feel comfortable and confident they know all the debts, so they won't publish an NTC at all. I think the attorney's job is basically just to lay all these options out for the clients so that they know what they're picking.
So again, you can but you have to go through probate to get that. You have to set up something, small asset amount, to go through and set that 90-day creditor limit.
Yeah, because to sign the NTC, unless the statute's changed, I don't think it has, to sign the notice to creditors, you have to be the court-appointed personal representative.
Okay, that was my question. I thought that was just odd. I had a family member pass away in another state, and all you had to do is publish something in the local paper, and you were done. You didn't have to go through probate or anything.
Well, different states have different laws. It's a different jurisdiction. So, yeah, to sign the notice to creditors, because I know it's a timing issue. You can't sign that until you're appointed. But a lot of times you can open just these perfunctory probates without, so to be clear, Kevin, if you open one of these probates, that doesn't mean everything in the trust is now going through probate. You just opened a probate sort of as a strategy to expedite the expiration of a creditor's period. You're not probating everything in the trust.
I got that. Okay, that was my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. Have a great Saturday. All righty, this is the Attorney Patrick Smith Show, 877-943-9673. I'm your host, Attorney Patrick Smith. All right, let's go to Jesse in Cape Coral. Jesse, welcome to the Attorney Patrick Smith Show. You have a guess on our top 4 list, number 2. Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, Patrick, I would think it would be a horse.
You got it. You got it, Jesse.
Those are expensive.
You're not kidding. Stable fees. There's a reason they call horse racing the sport of kings, and you need that kind of wealth. I was talking with someone, this was a while ago, about polo. I don't play polo, but I said to someone, so if I was going to get into it, like, what would I need? And they said, well, you need, I said, I need a horse. They said, you wouldn't need one horse. You need at least 4, was what I was told, to get through a match. You would switch out horses throughout the match. This is what I've been told. I don't know. I don't play polo. And I said, okay, so I'm going to buy a horse. Now, I don't want to buy the Ferrari of horses, but I want to look respectable out there. Like I want, sort of I want the Nissan Altima of horses. Like, it's a respectable car. So at the end of the day, he said about $250 a horse, $250,000 times 4. So I said, okay, so to be clear, we're $1 million in on horses, and we haven't begun to do anything else. So yeah, Jesse, don't expect to see me playing polo anytime soon, but great job on guessing number 2, Jesse.
Well, thank you. Hey, I got a question for you.
Go ahead, Jesse.
All right, so my mother-in-law passed away a while back, and going through everything with her estate, is there a checklist on how things are done, or do the lawyers just do it like, nilly-willy, or? Well, so I mean, can they give you a real timeline on, because I said, well, how long is this part going to take? And their answer was, well, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I got to do this. Well, that's fine, but how long does that take? Just if you can give me an idea.
So to be clear, Jesse, this was your mother-in-law's attorney?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's who we're going through probate with the estate.
But it wasn't your attorney, correct?
No.
Okay. So the short answer to your question is, in a typical probate, here are the steps. And we did a show dedicated just to the probate process. But in a nutshell, Jesse, it's petitioning the court to open the case, admit the will, appoint the personal representative. Within 60 days of those letters of administration, which those are the documents that empower the personal representative to go marshal assets, settle debts, within 60 days of that, there's a reporting requirement to the court called an inventory that's due, where they have to report the date of death value of the assets. And what I tell clients all the time with that is just make sure you meet the deadline. Even if you find assets later, we can always amend the inventory. What we don't want to do is miss the deadline and be delinquent on the inventory. The notice to creditors will run with that concurrently typically, and that's a 90-day window. Then at the conclusion of that, there's what we call a statement regarding creditors, and we, file the satisfaction and releases showing we've paid all the valid creditor claims. And then there's a full and formal accounting after the taxes have been settled. And that's usually the big hang up right now, Jesse, is finalizing the taxes because the IRS is so backlogged. So that is the one thing.
We're sitting there with the check, but we don't know who to divide it up to yet.
Well, have they finalized the decedent's tax return yet?
I'm not real sure on that.
So that's why, that's the step.
My wife is dealing with it.
Yeah, that's the step immediately precedent to the accounting. So once you finalize the taxes, that means all creditors have been satisfied, taxes have been finalized. Then
all that has been done.
Okay.
Yeah, all that has been done.
Then there should have been what we call a full and final accounting with a proposed intent of distribution, where you lay out, here's where we started, here's what we spent, here's how we derived your share, and here's what we plan to distribute to you at the end of a 30-day period unless someone objects.
So what's normally, how long does somebody, she passed away in July.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I would say that's within the realm of the reasonable, Jesse,
yeah,
to be honest with you. So, I mean, at the end of the day, each estate's like a snowflake. No two are exactly the same. And that's why it's hard to do a checklist. We've tried for years to do that, but it eventually turns into a phone book that's just so discouraging. So that's why I just do the old-fashioned in-person consultations with clients, whether they're widows or widowers or they've lost a parent. We'll sit down with you free of charge and just walk you through everything that's sort of nuanced for that estate. It's better than any checklist, Jesse, I assure you. And that's, as long as I'm in practice, we'll offer that complimentary consultation for anyone who's lost a loved one so that they can get guidance, whether they hire us or not. They can get the guidance on just knowing which direction they need to head.
Right. Okay.
All right. Jesse, thanks for listening to the show.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too, Jesse. Bye-bye. 877-943-9673. This is the Attorney Patrick Smith Show. I'm your host, Attorney Patrick Smith. Already an action-packed show. Talked about widows and widowers and alleviating their anxiety. Some of our speaking engagements, Pet Trust. We have our SCOTUS watch on the forthcoming President Trump opinion regarding his ballot access in Colorado. 877-943-9673. If you want to be part of the Attorney Patrick Smith Show, give us a call now. Next, we're going to Lakewood Ranch, and we're going to talk to Tom. Tom, welcome to the Attorney Patrick Smith Show.
Hey, good morning, Patrick.
Good morning, Tom. What's going on?
I just listened to your the little discussion about snowbirds, and apparently the New York and Florida program a couple of weeks back. I'm a snowbird. I don't live in New York, but my question is, we claim residency in Florida, but we own property and have a business in another state. And I've always wondered about, if it came down to, is it just our decision as to where we claim residency, or what are the qualifiers, and especially in an estate between the two states that we live in, and where the taxes would be paid should we were to pass?
Well, you're right. It can be a gray area. And I think with Florida, it comes down to the intent. And if there's any one thing you can do that's probably outcome determinative of the intent, it's called a declaration of domicile. And you can file it yourself with the county seat in the county of your residency. And basically the form reads something like this. Prior to this date, I was a resident of wherever, New York, Michigan, Pennsylvania, something like that. But this date forward, I am now a resident of the state of Florida, and you file that with the county. There's other things. You don't need to do the declaration of domicile. That's just one of the things a lot of people like to do because they feel like it's a formal codification of their declaration of residency. You can also just, get a Florida's driver's license, file your Florida homestead exemption, which, by the way, I'm glad you asked that question, Tom. The deadline for those of you who are applying for Florida ad valorem property tax exemption for your homestead is March 1st. That's coming up, so make sure you do that if you have not done so already. So it's where do you register to vote? Where do you pay your taxes? So I think it's all those things sort of taken together, Tom, that are outcome determinative on where you were declared a resident. For instance, Tom, let me ask you this. If you had your will in front of you right now, do you have a will in place?
Not a good one.
Okay, but you have one. The first line says, I, a resident of. What state does it say right now, Tom?
Actually, it would say Illinois.
So this is my point. So we get confusion here because you said I identify more as a Florida resident, but we have a document that's declaring you a resident of Illinois. So although I think it's possible to argue out of any taxation from the Department of Revenue in Illinois, you see the gray area there. So this is an example of, we talk about all the time the biggest mistake in estate planning, people don't do it, but a very close second, people don't update what they've done. And this is an example of that. Updating it is going to lead to optimization of the efficiency. So I think it's a matter of, just making sure you get in and get that reviewed and updated.
Well, another gray area, and thank you, is so I have a driver's license in the Midwest. My wife has one in Florida. My wife votes in Florida. I vote in the Midwest. So, but I from an accounting point of view, my accountant tells me it's the day's test. And we're very careful about being here in Florida 6 months in a day. Is that?
Yeah, I think he's talking about that ad valorem property tax exemption. As far as where do you reside, I think that's what he's alluding to, more than the, actually occupying within the state. So, for instance, if you're a professional athlete and you're a Florida resident, but you travel the world for your job, do you think they're worried about being here 6 months in one day?
No.
Right. So I think it's a different analysis for, ad valorem property tax analysis versus Florida residency. So those are two different things.
I don't know what ad valorem property tax is.
Your real estate taxes every year. So under Florida Statute 196, you get a break on the first $50,000 regarding your homestead property.
Okay.
And there's also restrictions on how much they can raise your homestead value of the property every year, so under the Save Our Homes. So there's special protections, but you have to apply for those by March 1st for the following year.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm aware of that. So you're saying, though, the day's test is not the overriding. If we were to pass and our children were trying to sort out our estate,
mm-hmm.
Accountants and tax people would not be concerned about how many days we spent in a certain state versus another. It would all come down to where we declare our domicile.
I think that would be outcome determinative. I don't know that it would be. Other factors could sort. So let's say you file a declaration of domicile in Florida, but then you're registered in another state to vote. You have a driver's license in another state. You own property in that state. You pay taxes in that state. It's possible that declaration could still be overridden by the facts, I think, Tom. And I think it's one of those situations where, it can be confusing and it can create muddy water. So I think the more bright line you can make it, the better. But I think it's going to be a question of sort of what was your intent at the time? Where did you intend to be a resident? And if it's sort of muddied, then unmuddy it, clarify it, so that it's less of an. Now, why? I'm just curious too. Why wife registered here to vote with Florida driver's license, and you Midwest and voting in Midwest? Is it a first marriage, Tom?
Yes, it's a first marriage. Yes.
And so you guys just like different states?
Oh no, we both consider ourselves Florida residents. It's just. I need a driver's license up north for other reasons, and actually regarding our business, we've got a fairly substantial business up there.
Mm-hmm.
It gets it's complicated. It's like you say, it's a huge gray area for me, and we got to get it sorted out.
Well, what I would recommend you do is schedule a consultation with your Florida attorney. If you don't have one, we'll be happy to consult with you, and schedule a consultation with your Illinois attorney. And that way, when you sit down, you can sort of compare and contrast what are the consequences if I declare this my residency and if I declare that my residency. And just to sort of show the rationale, let's say someone declared themselves residents of Illinois, okay, Tom? But they lived the entire next year in the state of Florida. Do you think the fact that they occupied the state of Florida for a year made them a Florida resident, despite the fact that they declared themselves a resident of Illinois?
I don't know.
I don't think so. I think you can freely occupy wherever you want. I think it's a matter of what was your intent. I think that's the pole star here that everyone's going to look to. So, I mean, some people become residents of a state and then, are professional engineering contractors, and they get sent abroad to do long-term project construction. That doesn't make them a resident of that state or other nation state. I think it's a matter of what was their intent. And I think that's the important thing, Tom. And the point you brought up for everyone to highlight is the fact that where you can take measures like updating an old will or updating a driver's license or filing a declaration of domicile just to make it bright line, do so. That makes it so much easier for your surviving spouse or your children upon your passing.
Yeah, and thank you. And that's what we will do. Well, one thing you mentioned, though, is I need to sit down with a lawyer up north and a lawyer down here to straighten that all out and then contrast and compare. I got conflicting information on that. I was told by my lawyer up north, you need to create your estate in the state that you're a resident, period. And he told me he couldn't even do it because he's not licensed in Florida.
Both of these things can be true, Tom. So your lawyer statement was you're telling him you're a Florida resident. And he's saying create the documents in the state of your residency, which you've just told him is Florida. What I'm saying is before you pick a residency, have a consultation with the attorney in each jurisdiction to make sure you know the consequences of that jurisdictional choice, which state you pick and what the outcome of that choice is. So both of these are good pieces of advice. Okay, they're not conflicting.
Yeah. Okay. So that my guess is that's fairly extensive legal exercise, is it not?
I don't charge anything for that consultation. I don't know what the attorney up... Well, I can charge you something if you want, Tom. You just tell me how much. I don't know what the attorney up north is going to charge you. They set their own rates, obviously. But no, it shouldn't be too much for 2 consultations just to get the size and lay of the land as far as which state's residency is going to be optimal for Tom and Mrs. Tom.
Okay. Everybody's told me that to create an estate for me, I'm looking in the $5,000 to $8,000 range. And it would feel to me to be able to make that decision properly, they would need to know everything about us and our businesses, our residents.
That's what the consultation's for, Tom. So we'll walk you through all that at the consultation. My standard trust package, because I believe in making estate planning affordable for everyone. My standard trust package, which is for non-taxable estates, those less than $13.6 million, is $695. And if it's just a standard will, it's $75 is the fee for a will. So the consultation's free. Tom, I'll give out the office line before I wrap up the show if you want to give me a call, okay?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I love your show.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate your kind words. Great listeners like you are the reason why we do it. Have a great Saturday, Tom.
Thank you.
All right, 877-943-9673. Hey, James, hang on the line. I'm going to take you off the air because I got to wrap up the show, but I will talk to you, so just stick around, James. If you have a legal question for next week, 877-943-9673. I'm your host, Attorney Patrick Smith. Again, to reach us at the law office, 877-754-6764. Again, remember, you can always watch the show on YouTube or Instagram at The Attorney Patrick Smith Show, or on Facebook, Attorney Patrick Smith. But again, to reach us at the law office during the week, to book us for your club or group to speak, or to book your complimentary consultation on estate planning, 877-754-6764. To book that complimentary consultation on probate or trust administration as well, 877-754-6764. Everyone stay safe, God bless, and go Gators.